Hey gang, welcome. I am Joe Edelman, and this is The Last Frame Live. Tonight, we're going to talk about your summer shooting plans and how you can best prep to make sure that you get some great shots. And if you're watching live, you know the drill. Please leave me a little note in the chat. Let me know who you are and where you are in the world. It's always cool to see who's here watching the shows. Already tonight, who do we got here? We have Anand in New Zealand. I've got, scrolling up to the top here, Caitlin's here, Neil Branch is here, and we got Canadian Source Rex Mike in Montreal. I've got Lynn in New York, John, Richard in Alberta, Ty is here from New Jersey. All of you are part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame Live. And for that, I greatly appreciate you. And look, if you're watching the replay, no worries. Leave a comment underneath the video. Let me know that you're here, that you checked it out. And if you have any questions, make sure you include them, okay? So for all of that, I am going to work really hard to try and help you with your photography in the next 60 minutes. Not a big script tonight, not a whole bunch of talking points. If you haven't seen it already in the chat, I left the message a couple times. What are you shooting this summer? What are your plans? Let's talk about what you're going to shoot, and we're going to do some crowdsourcing tonight, okay? Because I'm not an expert in all those categories, but I've probably at least dabbled in them. So let's talk about the kinds of things that you're going to be able to do to prepare and to make sure that you are getting some great images while you're shooting, okay? So let me just open up one more window here. There we go. I kind of forgot the comments, and it's important that I can see the comments, isn't it? All right. So I do want to make sure that I am taking care of a couple quick pieces of business for us tonight, okay? So the first one is, let me switch over to my browser here. ClickCon is coming up later this month. Got to get rid of that window. There it goes. Okay. It's going to be June 21 through 23. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be doing a photo walk, a beauty and color class, and also a marketing class. If you haven't signed up yet, if there's any way you can be in Chicago from the 21st to the 23rd, you don't want to miss this event. Unlike a lot of photography events, this is non-stop shooting. Like literally, there's very little classroom instruction, very little PowerPoint stuff. This is about pick up the camera and shoot. Tons of models, I think there's like 30 makeup artists that are going to be there. It's like crazy the amount of opportunity that you're going to have to really get hands-on experience and shoot and practice. So I will put some information for you here in the chat. It's also in the description below the video. It has the website address as well as a discount coupon or a discount code that you can use to get 15% off if you register. It's not an affiliate link. I don't make any money. Okay, it's for you. If you have the opportunity, don't pass on it. Make sure you get there. Okay. Also, I said two things. I actually meant three. Coming up next week, June 7th, I believe that's Monday or Tuesday. I should know. I think it's Monday. Digital file management for photographers. So if you're one of those photographers that just buys new secure digital cards, like when you fill up the old ones and you keep them all in a Ziploc bag, or if you've got like 15 hard drives floating around your house, half of them are plugged in, half of them are stored like in a closet somewhere, that is not the way to sort your files. So digital technology came out, or came in full force for me in the year 2000. That's when I got my Nikon D1. So I've been shooting digital for 22 years. I can find any image that I've shot in the last 22 years in 3 minutes or less using my system. So I would encourage you, if that's something that you struggle with, you want to check that out. It is a free presentation. I'll share the link in the chat for you. Also, I'll make sure that I add it it's not underneath the video right now, but I'll add it when we wrap up. I would encourage you, sign up, be there. No, it's not going to be recorded that you can watch it later, but if you miss it for $5, you can view it for 48 hours, and that way you get to see it. But I would encourage you for this one, if this is a topic that you struggle with, find a way to be there. As always, it's a live presentation, which means it's interactive. So you'll be able to ask questions. If you've got specific things that you're trying to accomplish, you can ask me those questions, talk to me about those, and we can work to solve your needs while you're there, okay? And then the last thing, and this is a big one because this is kind of your last opportunity to get in easy. I've been talking about the Tog Knowledge Learning Community for probably about 4 weeks now because I've been kind of getting it set up and getting it built up. But tonight I'm going to take a couple extra minutes before we get into summer prep. And I want to walk you through it. I want to show you what you're missing because it's not going to be free forever to get in. And it is going to be by invitation only. There will be an application process to get in. So here's your opportunity to go sign up tonight and be a part of the community. But please don't do it until you hear everything I have to say, please. And there's a reason why, you'll understand, okay? So number one, there's no money involved, and it's not a bait and switch. You're not going to get in there and then be told, hey, it's going to cost you money to stay here or anything like that. No, come on, when have I ever done anything like that? That's not how this works, all right? Here's what it requires. Number one, it requires that you sincerely want to improve your photography, meaning you're willing to put in some effort. I'm building a truly unique learning destination for photographers. It's called the Tog Knowledge Learning Community. So the big question, what the heck is Tog Knowledge? I've actually had people tell me they hate that phrase, Tog. Look, here's what Tog Knowledge is. It's the experience that you gain with the camera in your hand, right? It's basically the learning happens where the rubber meets the road when you take all the information that you've read, that you've heard, that you've watched in a YouTube video, but you actually put it to practice and learn the way that all humans learn best, by doing, period. My goal with this community is to create both a supportive and a very focused community dedicated to helping each other advance your photography skills in a way that is much more productive, much more supportive, and much friendlier than anything you're going to find in Facebook or, for that matter, any other online community. Let me say it one more time. More so than any other online community. I am that confident. But once again, requires a little bit of effort. So what kind of effort? Well, number one, no lurkers. Lurking, number one, you don't learn by lurking. So don't kid yourself. You just don't. So if you're going to join the community, be prepared to participate. Every 6 months, I will be purging members who have not participated. Now, you don't hear me saying, look, you've got to have 25 posts and 75 comments. That'd be nice, but that's not required, okay? I simply have the ability to go through the community and see, hey, who has not commented or posted or attended an event? And after 6 months, that's it. You're out of the community. I'm not interested in building up big numbers. That's not what this is about. This is not social media. It's none of that crap. This is about a learning community, period, right? And honestly, that's really what it comes down to. It's kind of like a cross between camera club and like a meetup group and even like a photography convention, right? So also, that goes without saying, if you are antisocial, don't join, honestly, because you will get to know photographers from around the world and you will interact with them as part of this community, okay? That's just how it works. Very shortly, there's also going to be some guest lecturers. I'm working on finalizing that schedule and bringing that in. Every week, we do a weekly video meetup in the community just to show you a little bit what's in here. Obviously, there's, similar to what you find on Facebook, there are sections for announcements. There are sections where people can post questions, chat, talk about things. We have one cool thing that folks have a lot of fun with. It's called the quote of the day. And so every day, I post a brand new photography quote from a photographer, and members of the group go through and they post images that they have that illustrate that quote. No comments, no feedback, no trolls, no trashing. It's just for fun. The photo share channel is a channel that I wasn't really thrilled about putting into this community, but a couple of people told me it'd be a great idea, Joe. You got to give it a try. And you know what? It's been awesome. Photo share channel, it is a love-only channel. No negative feedback, no suggestions, only love. It is an opportunity for you to share pictures to other photographers. You can boast about them. You can brag about them. All we ask, tell us a little bit about the pictures. Don't just slap the picture up there. Give us a reason to care about the picture, but no negative feedback, no suggestions, no nothing. It's completely safe. So if you're one of those people that are a little bit intimidated sharing your work because you know about those trolls that tend to rip people apart and say, oh, this sucks. You should have done this. You should have done that. This is the perfect channel for you. If you want reviews and you want feedback, just like we used to have in my Facebook group, we have image reviews where you can post images and you're going to answer the basic questions. Why did you take the shot? What was the goal? Did you achieve the goal? If you could change it, what would you change? You're going to give me all the settings, and I actually record video reviews here. Let me get back to one of the last ones that I did here. We record video reviews where I actually give you a full breakdown that you can come in, again, we've got to watch the review, and I do the review based on what you want to accomplish with the photograph. Articles, videos from my YouTube channel and my website. A lot of my videos, a lot of my articles have been around for a bunch of years now, and a lot of you don't know they exist. So every single day, I share a new one of those articles. But here's the cool part. If you regularly visit Petapixel, DIYphotography.net, fstoppers.com, DP Review, PDN Online, PopPhoto.com, any of them, SLR Lounge, you don't have to go to all those websites anymore. You can come to Tog Knowledge. We have the latest photo news, and in here, I have the feeds from Petapixel, DIY Photography, F-Stoppers, Photo Focus, DP Review, SLR Lounge, PDN Online, and Pop Photo. The articles appear here within minutes of being published. It's not like a day later, not like a week later. So the breaking news is here within moments of hitting those websites. And no, I'm not stealing their content. It's completely legal. It's for those of you that understand what an RSS feed is. These are fed through RSS feeds, okay? In other words, these websites provide this information and they want us to share it. So no rules being broken, okay? But what it does for you, it gives you access to all that information in one place. And here's the cool part. If you're just interested in the hows and whys, in other words, you don't care about all the gear stuff, I want you to notice as you scroll down through this latest photo news channel, there are no gear articles. I have them all filtered out. So if you just want to be able to read instructional photography articles from all of the major photo blogs, they're all in this channel. But I know some of you like the gear news. You want the reviews. You want to know what's up with gear. You want to know what the latest and greatest is. And you know what? That's okay because it's in the gear basement. You know I had to call it the basement, right? But anyway, the gear basement, super simple. Whoops. And for some reason, we're not loading. There we go. It loaded and I hit the refresh way too fast. All of the articles from those blogs that are about gear, okay, all get filtered into the gear basement. Here we go. So, we want to find out about a new light that's coming out or find out about new printers or camera lenses or camera bodies, reviews on lenses from DP Review, F-Stoppers, and Petapixel. They all go here, right? And I showed you before my classes that I'm teaching online for free. You can also register for them through the Tog Knowledge community. Later this year, I will also be doing some paid classes online. You'll be able to register for them through my website. You'll get a discount if you register for them through the Tog Knowledge community. Also, as I mentioned, we do a weekly community meetup. It's not required attendance, but if you can make it, we log on to Zoom, cameras required, because you're going to get to know people. And we talk, we solve problems, we get to know each other, we have a little bit of fun, just like a camera club or a meetup group. So if you think this sounds like it's for you, here's what you have to know. Number one, when you sign up, and I'm going to tell you how to sign up in a second, you're going to have to answer 4 questions, super simple, like where are you located in the world? What kind of photography do you do? What brand camera do you use? Don't worry, all brands are welcome, even Sony, even Pentax. Yeah, okay. And the other question is, what do you hope to get from the group? What do you most want to learn about? And you have to use your full name, no initials, none of that. You have to upload a profile picture that shows your face. There's no hiding here. This is not social media. This is a community. And you have to share a link to either your Instagram profile, or if you don't have that, to a website that has some of your photos. So that could be your own personal website. It could be Flickr. It could be 500 pixels, a gallery website. It could even be a Facebook profile that is publicly available where we can see your photographs. Simple reason being, if you comment on somebody's work, it's only fair that they're able to get a sense of what your skill level is so that they can understand where the comments are coming from, right? In a nutshell, that's it. Great group of people in there. There's about 350 people in the group at the moment. It's growing pretty quick. Once I open it up for the rest of the people that are in the Facebook group and the rest of the people online, the numbers are going to grow quite a bit more, but it's not going to be like a Facebook group where we're going to have thousands and thousands of people. That is not my goal. So, we're being pretty tight with the rules because we want people that want to learn. But I would encourage you, if you're really serious about learning, check it out. All right. So now I know somebody is already typing, man, it's 17 minutes in and you still haven't talked about what the show is about tonight. So I'll just go ahead and I'll leave that there for a minute. And when the clock turns to 6:18, we can go ahead and we can get into tonight's topic. All right. Which honestly, I just want to have a discussion to kind of help some of you out. It's summertime, right? Vacations are here. People are going to be doing some traveling. So you're going to take your camera, or maybe this is the camera you're taking. And you know what? That's cool. In fact, recently in the Tog Knowledge group, somebody posted the question, kind of, I think, looking for some affirmation. Am I making a mistake if I don't take my real cameras on vacation and I only take my phone? And, the reality of it is, these are real cameras. These are capable of taking incredible images. In fact, a few of the images that I have pulled out from my outdoor images, summertime images tonight, are actually taken with iPhones, right? So one of the first things that I would encourage all of you to do is start to really try to get yourself over this stigma of, well, it was taken with a phone. It means it can't be good. That's absolutely ridiculous, right? It can be good. So there's a couple things that you have to look at in terms of making your decision. Oh, and there we go. Jonas is here, and it was his post. He raised the question, right? So the things you need to look at in terms of, do you take your real camera, so to speak, with maybe some extra lenses and maybe a tripod, all that kind of stuff? Number one, it depends on where you're going. Number two, it depends on what do you want to shoot. Number three, it depends on how do you want to shoot it. Number four, here's one of the big ones, really. What is your tolerance level for carrying the gear? And then number five, the really big one, if you are traveling with a spouse or a significant other, what is their tolerance level for you not only taking the gear, but lugging the gear and taking the time to set up tripods, fumble around with gear, or changing travel plans to be in a certain location at a certain time because that's when the light's going to be best? Remember, it's meant to be vacation, right? So, I am kind of the philosophy when I go on vacation, and remember, I make my living as a photographer. So when I go on vacation, that's vacation. I'm not interested in taking all my big heavy gear. So when I travel, unless I'm traveling to teach for you folks, I rarely travel with camera gear. It's just not something that I want to do. I have made that mistake of taking trips, vacations, to places I've never been before that I may never get back to. and thinking, oh my God, like, but this trip's important. So I've got to take all my gear. Not long after my wife and I became a couple, we went on a trip to Italy. I had never been to Italy. I didn't think I would enjoy Italy. I was so wrong, but it was her dream trip. She wanted great pictures, so I took a full kit of gear and traveled Italy with that gear. And honestly, I was miserable with that gear. She was very happy in the end, but as I look back at those images, especially with today's technology, this was in like, I think maybe 2004. So these kind of cameras especially were not that good, and neither were the little, kind of compact digital cameras. But with today's technology, the images that I was able to shoot while on vacation, meaning, keep in mind, I wasn't at every location on the perfect day with the perfect weather, with the perfect light, at the perfect time. In other words, I was at these locations as we got to them. Part of the trip we were with a tour, so we didn't have control over the times, those types of things. The images were nice, but they weren't epic. There was nothing special about them. Fortunately, my wife was thrilled, but as I look back, I could have taken every single one of the images with one of these. Legitimately, one of these. So, today the rules are a lot different in terms of, all right, if I'm going to look at images shot with this, how's it going to match up to something that I could do with my regular camera? Now, I know some of you said that this summer you're going to be out like shooting wildlife and birds and things like that. Well, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to do too well with it, with an iPhone. But if we're talking about a trip and vacation, it's one of the things that you might want to consider is, do you really need to take the gear? Remember that vacation word, right? That's really the key, okay? So that's one of the first things that I think you have to do is you've kind of got to go through that scenario of, all right, what is the trip about? What's its main purpose? What are the tolerance levels, both of you, the people that you're going to be with? I see Ron just mentioned that he's leaving from Maui. I'm jealous, good for you. But even there, you're going to spend a lot of time on the beach. I don't know that I want to take my gear, to the beach. So then where am I going to use my gear? What are my plans, etc.? Factor all those things in. And there's only one wrong answer to that question of like, what gear do I take? And that is if you're not being honest with yourself about the tolerance levels and what you are realistically going to be able to accomplish, right? My only advice is don't create a situation where you're just making yourself miserable because you are either carrying too much gear or taking up too much time from family or friends or relatives, whoever you're with. It's not the end of the world to not have 60 megapixels and a super wide angle lens or a super telephoto lens. So that being said, though, if you are going someplace for the purpose of taking pictures, because the question, of course, that I asked everyone is, what are you planning on shooting this summer? And we got a bunch of answers here. Caitlin's going to be focusing on eagles, buskers, and street photography. Anand's just got a new puppy, Labradoodle, so he's going to be taking pictures of her while she's still small in the coming weeks. Mike up in Montreal is going to be shooting some of the famous landmarks in Montreal, both daytime and nighttime. Lynn's working. She's going to be doing bar and bat mitzvahs and a 50th anniversary party and daily pictures of her dog. Okay. John's going to be doing Midwestern U.S. landscapes, probably exploring different styles and approaches to see what conveys the message that I want. Okay. Let's see here. Richard's going to do more astrophotography. Teresa's going camping, so she's going to do camping related things like water, landscapes, that kind of stuff. Cool. Travis is planning on getting in some landscape and street photography this summer. Awesome. Who else do we got? Larry's going to be doing off-camera flash in an outdoor environment. Cool. Hopefully you don't get too hung up on that overpower the sun stuff, Larry. Just saying. Let's see. Any Camera Works. James hasn't decided, but he's in Alaska, so he's going to have a lot of options, and I would have to agree. Let's see what else here. I saw there were a couple others that came in. Ron, we know, is going to Hawaii. So, we've got a wide range of stuff. Obviously, part of why I, wanted to talk about this too is notice, all that's outdoors. Well, the overwhelming majority of it is outdoors because that's part of it. It's summertime. So I would propose the idea to all of you that shooting outside in the summer, especially if you're doing vacation shooting, right? Or really anything like that, it actually requires more prep than what you might normally put into pictures, right? So even if you tend to be an outdoor shooter, if you're going to go for a hike that's like an hour from home, you can kind of grab a bunch of stuff and go. And if you get there and you realize, you know what, I probably should have brought a wider lens. It's not the end of the world because it's only an hour from home. You'll be able to go back there. In fact, you'll be able to go back and you'll be able to plan a little bit better because while you're there this time without that really wide lens, you can look for, good locations that you want. You can check out what's the lighting like on a given time of day and all that kind of stuff and figure out, okay, with that wide lens, when I go back, I want to go to here, here, and here. And you're going to be able to get really great shots. So it's not that big a deal, but you're going to get on a plane or you're going to drive cross country, you're going to go someplace or, like Ron, you're going to go to, Maui. Yeah, that's kind of one of those things where you want to make sure you're covering all your bases. But at the same time, you don't want to pack the kitchen sink plus 3 other closets worth of gear and then have to deal with all that. So you really do have to do more work on the planning side than you normally would. So since most of you are looking at a lot of like, everything from astro to landscapes to animals and that kind of stuff, right out of the box, I would encourage you download some of the apps, either like Photographer's Ephemeris, Photo Pills, Sun Surveyor, which is actually my favorite of all those. Those apps give you all the information that you need for any date and any location in the world, what time sunrise is, what time sunset is. They'll tell you when the golden hour is, when the blue hour is. They will give you the weather forecast. They will show you where the sun will be in the sky at any given time during the day on any given calendar date that you choose. The reason why, and I know Surveyor is not the most popular of all of them. The reason why I like Sun Surveyor is I simply like the way the app is laid out, and Sun Surveyor actually even works indoors. So if I'm photographing a model and I'm using window light, and that's the plan, I can go to that room before my shoot. I can open up the Sun Surveyor app, turn on the camera, and it will activate the GPS, and it will show me at the time of day that I'm planning on shooting the model where the sun will be in relationship to the window that the model is going to be in front of, so that I know what parameters do I have to work with for lighting? Do I need to change the time, etc.? So it's extremely versatile. Keep in mind, if you're traveling to a town that you've never been to before, or a city or any place like that, Google Street View and Google Maps is amazing, right? You can, go to Google Maps, type in that address, go to Street View, and actually see locations that you may have never been to before to get a sense of what they look like. Then go to the apps that we're talking about, like Photo Pills, Photographer's Ephemeris, Sun Surveyor, and figure out what's going to be the best time of day. So that if you have the ability to schedule your trip specifically, you are going to be able to make sure that you're there at the time where you've got the best lighting, the warmest lighting, best shadows, all that kind of stuff, okay? See, we got a couple more people that have weighed in here and stuff they're going to be doing here. Cass, it's winter where she's at, so she's going to be inside doing high-key dance photography, okay? Let's see, what else do we got here? Okay, I thought there were a couple others that came in. So I thought what I'd do is just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a learning exercise. I'm going to go through some images that I've done outdoors, and they're not all models, okay? But believe it or not, contrary to what a lot of people think, is I actually do take pictures outside. Studio work is what I'm known for. Studio is where, I've made the majority of my money throughout my career. But I do shoot outside. And so there are a couple of things that I want to point out by going through these pictures. And I'm not going to tell you all kind of stories about them. What I want to do is I want to tell you thought process behind them to try and help you out a little bit. And I want to try and relate it to kind of some of the prep, right? So, but right out of the box, I'm going to break all of the rules. I'm going to show you literally a grab shot. So this image was taken at Mandalay Bay, the casino in Las Vegas. I was there. This was before the pandemic. So this was 2020. And I was scheduled to do a photo walk that year for WPPI. And the day before my photo walk, I walked around the property of Mandalay Bay to find a location. I took one camera and one lens, and I took an all-purpose lens since I was just walking around, and that happened to be the 12-100. At the time, I was still an Olympus ambassador, so I had the EM1 Mark II, and I had the 12-100 millimeter lens on the camera. Again, just walking around looking for locations. As I'm walking around, these elephants are actually part of a fountain outside Mandalay Bay, and indeed, one of the tusks had broken off, and this guy was the supervisor of the repair crew, and he was standing there holding the tusk, waiting for somebody to bring a tool where they were going to work on it. Had an opportunity to grab 2 frames and loved this frame. Went with black and white simply because the scene was mostly gray to begin with. So in color, it simply looked really, really flat. So I did go ahead and make the conversion. But this indeed was a grab shot. So there's a couple things worth pointing out. Number one is, if you're just wandering around with a camera, if that's part of your plan at any point in time during your summer travels, during these things you're doing, make sure that you have an all-purpose setup. By all means, if there's a chance that maybe you're going to need a long lens or something like that, do that. So I know a couple of people said they were going to go out and like shoot birds and all that kind of stuff. That's great. Take your long lenses, but make sure you've got a camera body that's also got an all-purpose lens. And even if you only have one body, that's fine. Have your long lens set up for, your birds and your wildlife, but make sure you have an all-purpose lens with you, right? That all-purpose lens, if you're a full-frame shooter, it might be like a 24-70. Maybe you want it to be a little bit longer, like a 70-180 or a 70-200. For Olympus, the 12-100 is amazing because that's a 24 millimeter to 200 millimeter full-frame, comparison. A lot of Olympus shooters like the 12-40 or the 12-45, also great all-purpose lenses. But those are the kind of lenses that are going to allow you a lot of extra versatility, and they're perfect for quote-unquote grab shots. Pay attention to your lighting when you're doing grab shots. Look closely at this shot. We've got heavy shadows. We've got whites, and I want you to notice nothing is blown out and nothing is blocked up. I've got pure black, but I also have detail in the shadows. I've got pure white, but I also have detail in the highlights. That, gang, is the greatest reason in the world, in the history of photography, to own a mirrorless camera. But just owning the mirrorless camera does not guarantee you a perfect tonal range. It does not guarantee you good blacks, awesome shadows, pure whites, all the detail and the highlights. It doesn't guarantee you that, but it gives you the ability, if you pay attention, to make sure that you always have that in your images. That's the key component, right? So exposure counts big time. This is a shot that I honestly did just to illustrate something in one of the presentations that I do. This was, and most of these outdoor shots, by the way, or most of them are older. This was actually done with like a Nikon D300 and a 24 millimeter lens with the camera just set down in the grass, shooting into the sun at f/16. For those of you that have maybe never done it before, if you have a wide angle lens, you can pull it off with a 50, but the longer the lens gets, the less impressive the effect is, right? So if you've got maybe like a 35, 28, 24 millimeter lens, if you aim it into the sun and get the sun partially behind something, so better yet, like imagine you're underneath a tree and you aim the camera up into the tree and the sun is peeking through the branches. All you have to do is make sure you're shooting at f/16. Shoot at f/16. Now, you still got to make your exposure work, right? But shoot at f/16 and you will get a starburst from the sun. So this one, there was a little bit too much sun peeking out to get a full starburst. But if you look closely, whoops, here, if I blow this up here. I'm not going to be able to blow this up. Am I? Is it going to let me get it? No, sorry. The way I have the screen configured, I can't. You can see, though, I've got like the sun rays that are coming out, okay? If I would have had it further beyond the horizon, I would have also gotten the starburst all the way around. But if you've never tried it before, try it. Just go outside, set your aperture to f16. Generally, you're going to want to underexpose the image slightly. And even this image is technically somewhat underexposed because I really wanted the deep blue sky. I wanted to get the star effect. So it's shot at f16, but that'll work. You could have the sun peeking out from behind the edge of a building, behind the edge of a sign, behind the edge of a tree. Shoot at f16 and you'll have a starburst, which is really cool, okay? This is the image that I used for the cover shot, and mainly the only reason I picked this, I mean, it's not like this image is gonna wind up on National Geographic or anything, right? But this was shot with a Pentax Option camera, 3.34 megapixels. How did we ever get pictures, right? The flash is the built-in flash on the camera, like legit. This was done while I was on vacation in Florida. I was somewhere on the east coast of Florida. In fact, I think it was Daytona. I was out on the beach, and I had never seen a blue heron before. So this heron was in the water, and the sun was setting, and had a fish. That's what was keeping it close to shore, and that's why it wouldn't leave. Even though I was getting crazy close to the bird, it would not leave. So, you know, it hung around. And then finally at the end, as the sky was starting to really light up with color, and I just had this little camera. I didn't have the big fancy Nikon D1 that I was using at the time. I just had this little compact Pentax that I had taken for vacation. And finally at the end, I decided, okay, I'm going to turn on the on-camera flash, and literally just held the camera down right above water level. I'm only about 3 feet from the bird in that shot. I rolled up my pants. I'm standing in the water barefoot. I didn't know that that was a blue heron. I had never heard of a heron at that point. I'll own it. I'm a city boy, right? So when I came home and I Googled it, I also found out that blue herons are actually capable of killing humans. And usually it will be if you threaten their food. So fortunately, my stupidity, I got away with it. But it hung around because every time it dropped the fish that it had, the tide was pushing the fish in, which meant it was pushing the fish closer to me, and it wanted its fish. So I was really kind of dancing around with it. If you've watched The Last Frame recently, you know that I talked about shooting portraits outdoors, shade. If you don't usually do portraiture, if you're not going to be going out with all kind of all-camera flash and heavy lighting and modifiers and all that, you can still take great images. Just find shade. Super, super simple. Maybe you're going to travel to someplace like, you know, Seattle, where in Seattle they have what's called the Seattle softbox. So if you've never been to Seattle, it rains most of the year. That's one of those places where they're excited by the number of sunny days they have every year because they're so rare. First time I ever taught a workshop there, we came outside to do an outdoor shot where the venue was, and it was cloudy, it was overcast. In fact, it looked like it was about to rain, and somebody literally said, it's like, oh, we call that the Seattle softbox. And it caught me off guard for a second, and then I realized, it's like, yeah, the cloudy overcast sky is this beautiful, you know, basically even light that you get, okay? So for me, the easiest way to go is to go in shade if it's a bright sunny day. Now, I want you to look here. You can tell that behind this model, a good 40, 50 feet away, there's a parking lot where there is open sunlight. There's no canopy overhead, right? So this is actually taken in the same place, but in this case, the young lady is at a tree that is only about 10 feet under the canopy, and she's looking out towards the open parking lot. So you can see the horizontal catch lights that come in from underneath the top of the tree, but it's a super soft, even light. There are no reflectors, no modifiers, nothing, right? It's just super simple light. Carnivals. Summertime is all about the carnivals, right? Take a tripod, do slow shutter speeds. These were shot with the Olympus camera where I was using live composite, but you can work with bulb, experiment, find the rides that are lit by colors, that spin, that go up and down, that move around. They make all kind of cool shapes, all kind of patterns. For those of you that are Olympus users, and you would be able to do something similar to this if you don't use Olympus, but it's a feature in the newer Olympus cameras that made this work. There is a feature in the Olympus cameras called Live ND, where in camera, you can replicate the effect of neutral density filters, 2 stops, 4 stops, 6 stops, 8 stops, 10 stops, etc. Okay. And it works similar to the way Live Composite works, where it's taking essentially multiple images, putting them together, and giving you the end result. So right after that feature first came out, I decided I wanted to try that feature on this kind of an image, which normally most photographers, myself included, would think of doing these kinds of images with Live Composite because it's perfect for this. So this shot is done with Olympus, but using Live ND, and it created the ghost images of the riders on the swings, which was one of those things I didn't know it would turn out that way. I had only had the camera for literally about 2 weeks when this fair, came to town, and I decided to go and try this out. And just on a whim, decided, let me try that feature for this shot. Mounted the camera on a tripod. I was really fortunate the ride operator was actually talking to another ride operator. So the guy that you see down at the bottom, there's a ride operator in the booth. They were just having a conversation. So he just stood there, and I was able to do this exposure over the course of a few seconds, which was actually multiple different exposures with Live ND. But I was able to do this shot with very little post-processing. So, color saturation, contrast, that type of stuff. But beyond that, there's no fancy post-processing to create the ghost images or anything like that. It came out of camera that way, which was awesome. So the moral to that is this is one of the reasons why you actually read your camera manual, folks. Like, I'm not kidding, right? You read the camera manual because none of you at this point, unless you're still shooting film, which I don't think any of you that are listening to me are, you're not using cameras anymore. Accept that fact and embrace that fact. You're using computers that are capable of recording images, recording amazing images with incredibly high quality. But every one of these cameras, I don't care what brand, what model you have, also have an amazing array of other features built into them. If you don't read the manual, if you don't learn what those features are designed for, then you're really wasting money that you spend because you're paying for all those features. And just like this image, it's not that you have to use the feature the way it's intended. Part of creativity is just sometimes throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, literally. So in this case, all of the landscape photographers that like to do those pictures like of the waterfall where the water just kind of streams all together and it's just, this white blur. That's what this feature is ideally for. That's what it's intended for, this Live ND. So when this camera came out, all the nature photographers were like, oh, this is so cool. It's going to be amazing. And indeed, it's a game changer for those photographers. Here I am. I'm a people photographer. I'm a portrait photographer. So my thinking was, what can I do with this? How can I make it work? And I have used it in some of my fashion portraits. But in this case, I wanted to go out and do some live composites of the rides and thought, hey, let's flip the script here. What if I try Live ND? And the very first frame, I got a sense of, oh my God, this will work. Took me probably about 10 frames of, attempts and trying, and then I changed my composition a little bit, and bingo, got this shot and was thrilled with it. I've used this shot for a lot of stuff, right? So, also, don't be afraid to have direct sunlight in your outdoor shots if you're working with people, but you got to pay attention to it. So like these shots here, you'll notice she's only barely in shade. In fact, in this case, she's got sunlight on her face. She's got some sunlight on her arms, but part of her face is in shade. The key to making this work, and by the way, this is all natural light. I didn't take any reflectors. I didn't take any lighting, none of that, but I do have a reflector. It's in the picture. It's the white wall. So fortunately, this blue graffiti ends like just barely past her. And then the wall up here, it's white. So what's happening is that's making the shade light enough that the sunlit areas are not 4, 5, and 6 stops overexposed. They're only about 2 stops brighter than her face, which means I've still got detail there, right? That's the key. So don't be afraid to look for natural reflectors. This one, similarly, I talked about the idea of, putting the model in shade. This picture right here is taken on a bright, sunny day. I recently did the last frames about shooting portraits outside in bright sunlight, and I have a video on my YouTube channel all about. In fact, here, let's go ahead and find that really quick. Let me pull that up. And I will, let's see, Joe Edelman, let's get to my channel. There it is. And I'll share the link with you so that you can actually see kind of behind the scenes exactly how I did this instead of me just describing it to you. I'll put it here in the chat for you. There you go. So basically, this is a bright sunny day, literally like high noon. She's standing along the edge of a building, but she's looking out towards a street that is filled with sunlight. And that's why you can see, actually, you see the catch lights. You can see the street, the horizontal line. If you look close, you can actually see me there. But it's giving me this nice, awesome, even light, but she's in shade. So I'm not having to do any work. It allows me to be able to move quickly. It allows me to not have to set stuff up and tear stuff down. And it allows me to, most importantly, pay attention to my subject and get images with personality. Okay? That's the whole idea. Similarly here, this is a water tower. There's a behind the scenes shot. So this is like high noon practically when this image is done. She's just in front of a water tower. Boom. There it is. Simple, easy. This one is lit similarly. She happens to be in the shade from a tree, but she's actually 10 feet from a pumping station from a sewage plant. Literally, okay? There was another outfit and another shot that we did using the side of the pump station building because it was a glossy green color, but she had this pink outfit and the sun was so bright and there was just enough shade for me to have her walk through the shade. Boom, there it was. So we went ahead and had her changed and we were able to do that, okay? So, the sums of those, if you're shooting little kids in sports, in fact, here, I'm going to go ahead, let's switch back to the browser. So the fact that I wasn't here last week was because I was shooting my grandson's baseball games. The pictures I'm about to show you are from multiple games, not just last week. But I want to point out some things because a couple people said, oh, they're going to photograph their grandkids or photograph relatives or their own kids for that matter. If you're going to shoot kids, right? The way you make your kid pictures stand out is number one, whenever possible, try to shoot at their level. Number two, isolate the backgrounds whenever you can. And then if you're going to shoot like kid sports, you'll notice with these images of my grandson, I do my darndest to basically make him look like a Major League Baseball player. That's my goal. Now, you'll see some of the images are funny, but all of these images are from this past season, okay? And notice the backgrounds. Whenever possible, I'm actually shooting slightly elevated, just enough to get all green in the background, or I'm using shallow depth of field so that I don't have tons of detail in the background, so that the background's not super distracting. But it's about getting the key moments, and it's about getting facial expressions. My grandson especially, he is like Mr. Facial Expression. He's got more facial expressions when he's playing baseball than you could ever imagine. But, the key to sports is understanding whatever sport you're photographing, anticipating the action. Notice, it's bragging point. He's in midair. He's not even touching the ground, right? So it's all about getting the key moments, telling the story. There's the ball going by. He's going to score. He's going to make it home. And then actually, as he makes it past me. So these images here, just to really drive some of you nuts, these two images, this one and this one, were shot with the 61 megapixel Sony with the Tamron 70-180 lens. So certainly this camera would not be my first choice for sports. It's not super fast, but the fact is if you understand the game, if you position yourself properly, you can shoot with cameras that aren't necessarily going to shoot 25 frames a second and, all that kind of stuff. All right. All of those cool features can help you make better pictures, but those features don't make your pictures better. Please understand that, differentiation. Okay. These are also from that same game. So this little series here, these are shot with the Sony 61 megapixels. And notice you haven't been able to tell a difference. We didn't get to these pictures and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, look at the resolution difference. These images have just as much noise as the Olympus images have. I'm not kidding, right? They legitimately do. But again, it's all about faces. Now, here's a point that's often debated amongst sports photographers. So I'll give you my reasoning why. I want you to notice there's a little bit of motion in his hand and in the ball. I will do that intentionally about 90% of the time. I have images that you'll see where the hand is frozen, the ball is frozen, same with the bat. The bat and the ball are frozen. And then I have images where I shot at a shutter speed just slow enough to get a little bit of motion. Part of me making these pictures is I want my grandson to be able to look back at these over the next couple of years. My grandson, not me, not my son and daughter-in-law, but my grandson. And I want him to see these pictures as he was the most amazing Little League baseball player ever to play the game. So part of this is telling the story, because look how much faster it makes it feel like he is pitching that ball. He's only 7.5 years old. He'll be 8 in September. So he's almost 8 years old, right? He doesn't throw that fast. But the point is, I want that little bit of motion. So I use the motion intentionally in some images for the purpose of storytelling. So I'll shoot him pitching. If he's pitching, I'll shoot him pitching with a shutter speed of like a 2,000th of a second so that everything is tack sharp. And then I'll shoot him pitching with a shutter speed of 1,000th of a second so that everything's sharp except for that release of the hand. And as long as I get that moment where he's releasing, I'll have just that little bit of motion that gives that sense of the speed of the ball, okay? Same thing, all right? But really what I'm after is I'm after faces. I'm after facial expressions. For me, that's the story that I'm working with telling him. He's all about the expressions. Last year, his team won the championship. This year, they're not going to win a championship. Last year, his team won a championship, and I did a little book called The Championship Season, which I gave him for Christmas. This year, hopefully he's not watching tonight. He does sometimes. But this year, the book is going to be called Faces of the Game. And the entire picture book is going to be all of his different faces and facial expressions. So, but again, I want you to notice, shot like this, full sunlight on one side, shadow on the other. Your exposures need to be spot on. You have to pay attention when you're shooting. It's about getting peak moments. It's about watching the backgrounds. If I have to have stuff in the background, I love it if I get something like this where it's the outfield sign with the baseball symbol and 185 feet from home plate, because at least, okay, it tells a baseball story, right? So location matters. Moments matter. That's the key. So there, again, you see, everything's frozen, locked solid. Also keep in mind when you're shooting any kind of action, like sports, action coming toward you or away from you, you can stop it with a slower shutter speed because it's not magnified to the camera. If it's going across your frame, you need a much faster shutter speed to stop the action, okay? So I don't have to show you all of these, but you'll see, again, it's all about, when I photograph him, it's all about faces. That's what I want. I'm looking for moments. I'm looking for action. I'm looking for images that tell the story, but this year, my focus was on faces. And that was a decision that I made the very first game of the season. I showed up at the very first game of the season, and the question mark was, okay, what am I going to do a book about this year? What do I want that story to be? And I looked at the pictures from the first game. He had some great facial expressions, and that's when I decided, okay, the entire season, I'm really working on faces, okay? And by the way, just to give you guys one other level to the baseball stuff, you might have figured out by looking at those baseball pictures, I'm all over the field. So this is AA Little League. This is 7- and 8-year-olds. These are little kids, right? The games are a combination of coach pitch and kid pitch. but I shoot from the dugouts. I shoot from the sides of the field, standing right by first base. I will shoot from center field. I never get in front of the kids playing center field, but I'll stand right behind the kid playing center field, shoot over his shoulder, looking straight in. Nobody complains. Why don't they complain? Because number one, I'm not interfering with the game. Number two, I give the league access to all the pictures that I take from the Little League games, and they use them on their social media. So the league loves me because they get all these professional images for their social media. And I take all the images of the rest of the kids that he plays with, and I put them on a similar gallery like I just showed you for him, and had the coach email all the parents with a link. And the parents can go and they can download the pictures of their kids. So I don't go and just shoot my grandson. I go and I shoot the whole game. I shoot every kid on the team. I shoot the opposing teams, and I give pictures to the leagues. And I don't spend tons of time processing. I'll go, the games are 2 hours long. I'll come home that night. I'll download all of my stuff. It takes me about an hour to go ahead and prep the images, do my culling, prep the images, cropping, everything, and upload it. That's it. So what that buys me is it buys me goodwill with the league, and it buys me access to pretty much do whatever the heck that I want, as long as I'm not actually interfering with the game. So keep in mind, there are times where it's worth giving away things for free because it curries you favor to be able to do the kinds of things that you want to be able to do while you're shooting, right? So, again, any of this kind of stuff that you're going to shoot, as you're shooting people, it's all about prep. What's the weather? Where are you going to shoot? Where's the sun going to be at the time of day? Watch your backgrounds, right? So, chasing my grandson, this was years ago. In fact, these two pictures, these were the first pictures I ever took with an Olympus camera, for what it's worth, okay? So this was a camera that I had rented when I was trying it out. We were at a family gathering, and he was running around with a stick, so I made a game out of it. He was actually trying to hit me with the stick, and I wouldn't let him. So when we first started, it was an okay shot, but there's a building behind him, right, which I didn't ideally want. So he chased me around the yard a little bit, trying to get me with a stick, and so finally I knocked the stick that he had away, and he picked up another stick, and it was shorter but heavier, and he had a hard time holding it up. So then I switched to a wide angle lens, and I started shooting down on him, and now I wound up with a scenario where I had simplified the background, right? Took all the junk out of the image, and it's all about him and playing with the stick. These pictures of him playing on the water slide, you may have seen these before. Notice what I've done with the backgrounds, right? I've picked an area of this backyard. This is my son's backyard. They had the slip and slide set up. I wanted to make sure that I didn't have all kind of junk and lawn chairs and everything else in the background. So keeping the backgrounds really, really clean, keeping them simple. I'm working with different camera angles. I'm working with different lenses, using shutter speeds that are fast enough to actually isolate the drops of the water, stop him, freeze his action. Again, it's all about faces, all about moments. Tell stories. Obviously, using the Olympus cameras, I can get them wet, which is great. So I was actually shooting, these shots with the camera literally like in the water spray. So if you're going to shoot something, the point behind that is don't just take one or two pictures, take multiple pictures, right? Take a bunch of pictures and tell little stories. So I've done a lot of talking. There haven't been any other questions that have come in yet. So if you have any other questions, type really fast because we're at 7 o'clock. We're just about wrapped up here, gang. But the point is this, look, unless you're down under where it's cold, up here in the Northern Hemisphere, it is summertime. You're going to be out a lot. You're going to be out and about. I'm not kidding. I don't care if you shoot all your pictures with this, right? Good photography in today's world is about finding that balance, right? Don't let somebody else define what good photography is for you. Remember why you want the pictures, right? If you want the pictures to be able to remember a trip, if you want the pictures to be able to remember someplace you went or some time you spent someplace, these are great. These are absolutely great for that purpose, okay? If indeed you're trying to make professional looking pictures for whatever the purpose, then okay, you need your gear. Regardless of what you're going to shoot with, if the pictures matter, put in a little bit of time and effort before you go. Check the weather, use the apps, check where the sun's going to be, see what the lighting is going to be, use things like Google Street View, Google that location, etc. And that way you're going to have a much better chance of getting great pictures. Elliot Sermon, can I tell you what the keep it simple setup is? Help me out. In reference to what? Keep it simple setup for what? I try to do everything keep it simple, like totally, but you know, that doesn't always work. But give me a little bit more, Elliot. With regard, are you talking about like a studio lighting setup, or when I'm shooting like baseball? Baseball, for the, I maybe should have said, when I'm shooting like my grandkids outside, 99.9% of the time I'm on auto ISO. That way I set my shutter speed and my aperture based on what I'm photographing and what he's doing. And then I will use the exposure compensation dial to override any mistakes that the auto ISO is going to make. But even with the Micro Four Thirds camera, I don't worry about the ISO going up. Right now, that's not to say that I'm going to stop my lens down so much that you know, I'm going to wind up shooting at like 64,000 ISO. No, I don't want that. So, all right, Elliot here. Elliot said here, oh, one camera, one body lens. So, Elliot, it'll actually depend on where I'm going and what I'm shooting. But with my Olympus cameras, it is generally going to be one of two lenses. So the keep it simple setup is a camera body. So at this point, it would be the EM1 Mark IIIs. I do not have one of the OM1s yet. I probably will upgrade eventually, but they're really hard to get a hold of. I don't get them free anymore, so you know I gotta buy it. But I probably will upgrade. So it would be my EM1 Mark III, and if I need or think I might need up to a 200 millimeter focal length, then it will be the 12 to 100 f4 lens, right? That's because that's a 24 to 200 millimeter focal length range, full frame. If I know that I don't need the longer focal length, if that's like not likely to be a case, then it's most likely going to be the 12 to 40, which is a 2.8, or the 12 to 45. Either one of those two lenses will, because that lens is like super, super small, super lightweight. That's most likely what I would take if I'm taking a real camera. Again, a lot of times this is my super simple setup. I mean, I've got 3 lenses built into this. I've got great resolution, awesome low light capabilities. You know, I can shoot video, slow motion video, you name it. These are amazing. I can even do shallow depth of field using the portrait feature, which works incredibly well at this point, right? If I'm doing the keep it simple with my current Sony camera, the A7R4A, it would most likely be the 28 to 70 Tamron, which I use. That's a 28 to 70 2.8. Love it. Super sharp lens, great range, not particularly big or heavy. Really surprised me when I looked at the Sony cameras. The Sony A7R4 body is literally, I'm not exaggerating, fractionally bigger, barely bigger than the EM1 Mark III Olympus. And it's about the same weight, right? So indeed, the full frame 28 to 70, the Tamron, is a little bit bigger than the Micro Four Thirds lenses, but that Sony still makes a nice, small, lightweight, you know, kit to travel with. I hardly ever take that out for walk around stuff, mainly because I just don't need that many megapixels. You know, remember guys, for years as an Olympus ambassador, I was showing you even billboards, right? I can shoot anything. I'm not getting noise. I'm not having all kind of grain issues. I can make big images. I can have billboards made. So all that crap that, you know, certain YouTubers and all that stuff like to push just to, you know, be able to get people worked up and make sure that you buy cameras from the companies that are sponsoring them, that's all baloney. There are no bad cameras on the market today. There are no bad cameras on the market today. There's just a lot of bad photographers. Keeping it real, right? So that's why you put in the effort and you do the planning and you get out and you practice. Okay? All right, gang. So next week we'll be back to Wednesdays. I do hope to see some of you in the Tog Knowledge community, but take your time when you sign up. Make sure you read everything that you come across. There's a lot to learn there. There's a lot for you to participate in. like I said, it requires a little bit of effort. And make sure that you have a profile picture. We want to see your face. I don't care how ugly it is. Come on. Can't be bad compared to this. Just can't, right? So picture with your face. You need to share a profile, Instagram or a website. And do me a favor, when you put those addresses in, never. This is not about my community. This is a tip for you, tech tip. Never type a website URL. Never. Copy and paste, right? Because otherwise you leave out like the colon or one of the slashes, or you miss something. So open up your Instagram profile, copy the URL, paste it into the form, right? But hope to see you there. Have a great week. Thanks for coming out.